Hey guys, Nicole here from Writersbrooke, and welcome to our first video. For today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the movie Aquaman. I'm going to cover some pros and cons of the movie, as well as give my overall recommendation. To be honest, I came into this movie expecting it to not be very good. I'd seen the trailers and the posters and didn't find them to be particularly interesting, especially compared to some other comic movies, both DC and Marvel. But my friends wanted to see it, and so I thought, sure, why not? Let's go. It'll be fun, whether or not it's any good. I was pleasantly surprised, however, when I actually watched the film. Overall, it had a goofy and whimsical quality to it that I thought made it closer to the actual comic book than I expected. And it was also very reminiscent of the Marvel Universe films. The color palette was bright and happy, unlike most DC movies. Jason Momoa gave a fantastic strength and yet vulnerability to the character that I didn't expect after seeing Justice League. He was caught between two worlds, but he didn't really fit in either of them, which made him really relatable. The costume design helped to symbolize this journey that he went through in the film, going from a more dark and grungy feel in the beginning that symbolized the fact that he didn't quite fit in anywhere, and progressing until it became brighter, ultimately culminating in his original gold and green suit from the comics. Amber Heard, as Mera, made a lovely leading lady, equal parts warrior and princess, which is something I think that DC does particularly well. They create well-rounded female characters who are relatable, balanced, and realistic. I was pretty disappointed at first when I found out that they had changed her hair color from the more orangey tint that it was in Justice League to the fire engine red that it is in Aquaman. My initial thought was that they were going for a Little Mermaid look because it was in the ocean, but then I realized that Mera's hair is originally that color in the comics. Yet again, this is an example of a more authentic take on the film that brings it closer to the comics. Her costume, I'm a little torn on because in Justice League, it was more of an armor that would effectively be able to protect you in battle. But here it seemed much less like actual armor, which could be seen as a fault, but it could also be seen as more of a natural and aquatic look, giving her the feel that she actually belongs and feels at home in the water. It also might imply a more advanced technological ability to make armor thin and more comfortable. Atlantis itself clearly had very intense technological abilities. It had grown a lot since even its fall into the 7 different kingdoms, some of which had been completely destroyed over time. The set design here was immaculate as they defined and set up these beautiful and breathtaking and also terrifying kingdoms at times that were found in the middle of the ocean. Suspension of disbelief I found easier because these worlds were found in the ocean, because the ocean is sort of like our space. We don't really know much about it. We don't know what's out there. So going on this adventure with them seemed like a way to explore this frontier here that they gave us. Another amazing feat was the special effects that they used for the film. Clearly, you can't actually speak while you're underwater. It's physically impossible. But they were able to accomplish this feat by the special effects that they had. They had the actors in harnesses in front of a green screen for much of the filming, and they had their hair tied back with green screen material so that they could control the movements of the hair during post-production. Now, the villains of the film were arguably the weakest point, simply because they tried to do a lot in one film. Black Manta is a fun and strong villain, but because of the pacing of the main plot of the film, he sort of became a subplot, making his scenes feel more like a side quest. I wanted to see more of him, which hopefully I will in the next film, if the end credit scene is any indication. King Orm, on the other hand, made a stronger appearance in the film, pushing the majority of the film's conflict along. I did really enjoy the fact that we got to see him somewhat from both Mara and Atlanta's point of view. It humanized him more, and even though he was definitely a bad guy, you know, the kind of kill everyone, take no prisoners kind of dude, by the end of the film, it felt like he might be redeemable. Whether he strives for that or not later remains to be seen. Before I talk about the ending, definitely spoilers coming up, by the way, I want to mention the scene entering the Trench Kingdom. It was horrifying. They did a brilliant job making this tiny boat in the middle of the ocean feel even more claustrophobic than it had before, as they were attacked from all sides by the monstrous people of the trench in the dark. The music was also extremely effective, not to mention the wide establishing shot of Mara and Arthur plunging into the dark abyss of the ocean, pursued by those very same frightening creatures. It was terrifying. The ending, however, was the exact opposite. His parents are reunited and peace is restored to the kingdoms. It was a fairy tale ending where the would-be king saves the kingdom and woos the girl along the way. Only in this case, the would-be king only exists at all because of a love that never should have happened, but was fought for. It was a beautiful ending that showed us that we can make a difference in a positive and lasting way, not in spite of our flaws and shortcomings, but because of them. All of us have strengths in us, whether it's easy to see or not. And if we fight for what we believe in, we might actually be able to do some good in the world, like an outcast lighthouse boy was able to do in the film. Yes, it was cheesy. Yes, it was a fantastical movie where people fought riding on the backs of killer whales. But all of that is why we loved the comics to begin with. All of that and more is why stories can help us reflect on our own world. So overall, I'd have to say I really enjoyed this film, and I definitely recommend it to anyone. If you go in expecting whimsy and adventure, you'll have a lot of fun along the way.